Yeah, collaboration and communication and sharing, things that are going wrong. We always say failing forward, right? We're a
Hmm.
big believer in everything, every failure and mistake is a learning opportunity. And again, going back to being cutthroat, we don't want someone coming in and just being cancerous in culture when it comes to just being, taking things from people, right? We want
Yeah.
to just continually level people up.
Welcome back to Exploring Growth. Today, we're looking at what it takes to build a team of salespeople with my guest, Gabe Lullo, CEO of AlleyOOP. And sales, as we know, is the lifeblood of early stage and second stage companies. And getting it right can give you the opportunity to scale later on. So I've really been looking forward to this conversation since I was introduced to Gabe. Welcome to the show, Gabe.
Thank you so much, Lee. First off, I'm a huge fan of yours. I've always wanted to grow a beard like yours, so I'm a big fan
Thanks.
of your beard too. But most importantly, your show is awesome and your content is great. So thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I always say my beard, when I get comments on my beard, it's like, great, but it's the one thing that takes no talent. You just
Exactly.
have it or you don't, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay,
love
so
it.
before we jump into this conversation about building sales teams, tell us about your company and what you guys do.
Yeah, we're one of the largest SDR agencies in the world. A lot of people don't still know what an SDR is, and that's okay. Sales
Yeah.
development rep.
Mhm.
So top of funnel, appointment setting, prospecting, qualifying leads. That's what we do. So companies come to us to help build that out, and we grow their team in a white labeled fashion. So we're getting those SDR teams spun up. And the big piece of what we do is enable the SDRs. I mean, anyone could hire someone and tell them, hey, go cold call. But without the support, the data, the tools, the management,
Mhm.
the different type of scoring using AI and how to use or not how to use AI, right? All the things that are involved in the enablement piece is
Mhm.
really the hard part, and that's where we shine the most. We have about 100 SDRs on our sales floor, and we help all different types of businesses scale and grow their top of funnel function.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about like I've been trying to make French baguettes at home, and I'm thinking I got these recipes and I watch the videos and it's super simple. It's four ingredients, and it's the way that you manipulate the dough and proof it, whatever. And it never turns out. It's like I cannot make it work, you know. And I think about that for what you do is, what you do is pretty straightforward. Like you have people pretty much get on the phone, get on email, they're getting in touch with people, but it's just not that simple. There's all this other connective tissue that goes with it that makes you a good baker, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. A lot of people, hear words matter, right? Our entire
Yeah.
talent is the ability to use words in the right way, in the right tone, and the right timing. But the
Yes.
reality is people mix up simple and easy.
Yeah.
And it's not, right? It's what we do, you're right, it's very simple. We actually all we do, I labeled it as we're professional introducers,
Hmm.
right? We get one person introduced to someone else and we have them talk and hopefully business can be done. From that point of view, it's a very simple process.
Yeah.
But the complexity and the difficulty of doing it at scale
Yeah.
for large business to business companies who are, trying to target the right people at the right time to make
Hmm.
maybe, multi-million dollar annual contract deals, it gets
Hmm.
very sophisticated for sure.
Sophisticated, and it's really an art. It's an artwork or an art form when it comes down to it. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of like you said, data and touch points that have to go along the way. You have to have systems, you have to have processes that make it scientific. But I think when it comes down to whether it works or not, is if you have that touch that you put on top of everything else, and then and training those people to identify what that touch is and cultivate it and make it grow. I think is the key. So
Yep.
let's look at this. What kind of companies do you normally work with? And I'll phrase it a different way. What kind of companies do you see being a good fit for needing to build out a sales team?
It's an interesting question because, we're not like every other company that has a very defined ICP and it's
Hmm.
very, very, focused on this and only this.
Hmm.
I always say our sweet spot is we have no sweet spot. And what I mean by
Hmm.
that is, we have companies like Peloton, ZoomInfo, Adobe
Yeah.
that, utilize our SDR campaigns and they're very big companies. And then we have two guys that just got a couple hundred grand from Shark Tank and they're literally employees of two, like the whole
Yeah.
company is two people,
Yeah.
and so they're bringing something brand new to the market and everywhere in between. I would say the one thing we do specifically and what we don't do is we don't work with product-led growth companies. We don't really work with companies that have a huge inbound, lead generation, setup. We're looking for, if you have a discovery call or a demo that is live in nature in your sales journey, then we are absolutely a fit no matter what scope, vertical, or size you are.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so that's a big range from the two-person to Zoom info, and
Yeah.
that's great because I think that will sort of frame out our conversation. As I'd really like to get your insights on the two-person company and how they should be thinking about it. And as you scale up, to 5, 10, 50, $100 million companies that have different dynamics going on. But before we do that, let's kind of get some fundamentals out of the way because I think this is very important too, wherever you are in that process of building a sales team. What separates a good SDR from an average one?
Yeah. Well, I break it down into 5 C's, and this is what we look for when we're looking for SDRs. And by the way, we do not hire new SDRs. We used to a decade ago when it was still a very new role and there wasn't any SDRs to go find and source. But
Yeah.
now our clients expect immediate results, immediate turnaround. We don't have the ability to have like a 1 year ramp when you're hiring someone brand new out of college. Nothing against those people who want to use
Yeah.
this as a starting point, but we're looking for people who have the experience. So the big things is curiosity. You got to be curious. You have to be good at asking questions. You have to be good at probing. And that's really where qualifications come into the SDR role. The second is coachability. You can't have a chip on your shoulder. I want you experienced, but I don't want you arrogant. So you have to be willing to be coached and trained and mentored. And then thirdly, you have to have courage. You have to be willing to call the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And it sounds easy, like we talked about, but you have to have some balls to do that. And you have to be courageous to do that. Right. Confidence is king, right? That's the fourth one. You got to come through in your tonality and your level of business acumen and your ability to deliver the message has to be very strong, especially with the prospects you're talking to. But I think the most secret sauce is the fourth one, which is consistency. You got to be coming to your A game every day. You can't take 2 days off of a week and expect to see the same results, right? This is a performance sport. It's a contact sport that he or she contacts the most wins typically. And so you have to be on your A game every day.
To that last point, do you find that people that come in to fill this role, they either really love that competitiveness or they just aren't about it? Or is there some middle ground?
Yeah, we absolutely see it's a kind of a black and white scenario, right? Some people are just not wired for this, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I have a cousin who's been working at the same accounting firm since he graduated college, and it's been a couple decades, and he'll probably retire from there, and it's very regiment, and it's just not the same environment. In here it's ever changing, and your performance is very competitive, not cutthroat but competitive.
Sure.
So I look at it as like sports. Are you going to be on the chess team or are you going to be in the football team? Both are things to do, but are very strategic and very different type of person. And the landscape and the culture of a sales floor is extremely different than you would if you're working, let's say, at a consulting firm.
Yeah. So knowing yourself is going to be key there.
100%.
Okay. So then that frames out really well a good SDR. Now you put them on a team. What separates a good team from an average one?
Yeah, collaboration and communication and sharing, things that are going wrong. We always say failing forward, right? We're a big believer in everything, every failure and mistake is a learning opportunity. And again, going back to being cutthroat, we don't want someone coming in and just being cancerous in culture when it comes to just being, taking things from people, right? We want to just continually level people up. We deal with a lot of negativity. You hear the word no more than you hear the word yes. It's like baseball. You're going to strike out no matter how good you are, more than you are going to hit the home run. So you have to come to the plate every day with this level of optimism and positivity. And so that is something that we foster and we look for in a team environment.
Yeah. Okay. And then one last question here for the fundamentals. What about where do you go to find this kind of A player, unique personality type of person?
Well, I think past performance is a great indicator of future results. And
Yeah.
so if you've done this before and you've had success, you've cut your teeth and you don't feel like the phone weighs 1,000 pounds,
Yeah.
that's like step one, right?
Yeah.
And then, have you hit your KPIs and metrics? Have you hit goals and quota? That
Hmm.
would be step two. And are you, able to actually have strong communication skills? And are you prepared to answer anything that's thrown your way? Now we figured it out. So we figured this out down to like literally a mathematical equation. We know that no matter what is being said, 10 things are going to come back to us.
Hmm.
So no matter what happens in the pitch, we're going to get 10 different categories of responses.
Hmm.
And so we enable our reps to be ready and prepared
Hmm.
to hear that and then respond accordingly. So if they can have some of that built in already, we definitely want to hire out of people who have that experience.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's jump into this sort of two-man to Zoom info, right? We start with
Sure.
the small companies.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of trepidation behind spending money on something like this, right? Whether they're trying to do it themselves, DIY, or they're trying to hire an outfit like you guys, um, kind of with that lens, right? Like we're spending the money and we need ROI, right? Um, how would you advise a company that's small to get started with their first rep?
Absolutely. So if you're doing it in house, I would be very, again, this is not self serving, but think about it like this. If you're a brand new startup, are you going to have an accounting department in house? Are you going to have, a marketing department in house day one? Most likely not. Most likely you're going
Right.
to outsource that to agencies. And when you put that hat on, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
No different than when you want to outsource it to an SDR agency. Now, the hard part is finding the right partner because there's a lot of companies in our space that attempt to do what we do, but no differently than a marketing agency or an accounting firm or an HR firm handling those departments for you day one.
Right.
Here's the pitfalls, right? Most companies, founder led sales, two guys with an idea, they hire a VP of sales day one and they think
Mm-hmm.
that that's like the best way to go. It's the exact opposite because that VP of sales first job is to not go out and sell. Typically, they want to go build a team. So then
Yeah.
now you're paying a very high price VP of sales who then wants to take more money of yours to go hire a team that reports to them. So that's the
Sure.
wrong way of doing it. The best way to do it, in my opinion, is to outsource it because
Okay.
the cost structure alone. Because keep in mind, it's not
Sure.
just the rep, you got to have data. So now you got to go buy data from these data vendors. Now you have to have a
Yep.
dialer. Now you got to go buy a dialer. It's
Mm-hmm.
a 1 year contract. They're not going to give you a
Mm-hmm.
deal. Then you have to buy an email tool, and then you have to have someone integrate and manage that. And then you have to have a reporting functionality. So
Mm-hmm.
just that piece alone is starting to get extremely expensive. Then you have to do payroll and commission, and then hopefully educate and train. So when you start
Yep.
looking at all of those costs, it gets insane. Bridge Group came out last year with $152,000 a year it will cost to support and pay one SDR. And that's with them making 50 to 60K. So
Yep.
the other half is just the support and the data and the tech. Long
Yeah.
story
Wow.
short, my version is outsourced, but I also recommend being a founder led sales organization. If
Yeah.
you're the founder, if you're the two guys running the company, you're also the salespeople. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have time to go prospect. Have someone else prospect for you. Let them fill your calendar and you be the seller. And you're also going to learn
Yeah.
so much about what you need to be doing differently or adding to or product market fit or features
That's
and
true. Yeah.
functionalities. Like you're going to learn so much by being on those sales calls as the founder.
Yep.
And then you'll figure out some secret sauces and some product market fit information, and then you can scale from there. That would be my recommendation.
I like that. And, I like it because as young companies, founders, they wear a lot of hats. So taking that hat off and investing in an infrastructure that can support them, and then they can sit in that sales seat to
Yep.
actually, meet the client, and the clients, they're going to have a higher rate of sale, conversion there because they are the founder. People looking, okay, well, I can trust you to do this thing. So, versus them being on the phone as the first touch point. Um, I think that makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
Any other advice you would give to that small company in terms of, um, you know, tools, how to think about data, like anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you did decide to, spend money on anything that would be a supporting mechanism for this function, would be good data, because
Yeah.
you can do a lot with that, and it's
Yeah.
not just cold calling. You can do email campaigns with that. You
Right.
can do webinar campaigns with that. You can do, LinkedIn connections and content with that. So
Hmm.
really determining what your ideal client profile is
Hmm.
and finding data that is in your total addressable market is definitely the first thing that we do to determine to build a campaign. So it would be the first thing we'd recommend anyone to do all the things we just mentioned, because
Yeah.
there are some other ways of outreach versus just email and phone, right? So data will always support all those go-to-market strategies.
Hmm.
And I would say your first thing you would want to invest in is a strong data partner to help you supply that data.
I like that. And would the data come along with the outsourced SDRs, or is the data separate,
Yeah.
some kind of separate tool?
With us, we supply data with all of our clients. Not
Okay.
every agency does that, because it's very expensive, but
Sure.
due to our size and scope, data is inclusive, fully inclusive. Now,
Hmm.
companies sometimes come with data already, and they go to trade shows, they do this, they have a mailing list, they
Yeah.
have some sort of data. We can take it and then enrich it and
Hmm.
then use it and and
Hmm.
and, and use it in ways that is still best in class and updated daily. But
Yeah.
we don't require any data at all when a company comes to us.
Love it. Okay. So going beyond the two people,
Sure.
two-man company, let's say, now we're at the maybe 5 million, $10 million mark,
Hmm.
the second stage growth. They've got product market fit. Maybe they've done a lot of selling themselves up to this point, and
Hmm.
followed your advice. But they have been doing a lot of the front end stuff too. And they're kind of getting worn out.
Yeah, yeah,
What would you say to that? That's second stage company.
yeah, for sure. So at that point, then you want to start owning more of the enablement piece. If you're getting to, we look at it as a head count
Okay.
for us. So if you're at
Yeah.
the 10 SDR mark, it starts to make sense to start owning a lot of pieces to this department. Okay.
Okay.
So 10 is essentially our tipping point. And we supply services for the larger companies who are at that 10, 50, even 100 or more SDRs, but
Hmm.
we don't do the full management piece of it. So they now could afford an SDR manager. They can afford a
Hmm.
CRM that is, powering an SDR capacity. They can
Hmm.
start affording a dialer that allows them to have everything in their ecosystem so it works with their systems more effectively.
Yeah.
What we would then do then is come in, and we're more essentially the people side of it, and the SDR on demand, we call it. We call it plug
Okay.
and play, essentially, is our program, where it's, you
Hmm.
don't have to worry about recruitment and turnover and
Hmm.
interviewing and backfilling. Because again, this role, it's not as transient as working in a restaurant industry, but it's pretty close. The average
Sure. Yeah.
SDR
The
is yeah,
turnover is pretty high. Yeah.
turnover is pretty high. So our plug and play model is essentially our people, best in class reps, plugged into our clients' ecosystem who are at that 10 million plus mark. And we
Okay.
manage the people side. They manage the actual day-to-day operations and the technology side. And then that's a great partnership, for as big as you want that to go. And so
Right.
that's how we support our enterprise clients.
Okay. So you've got, you're recommending that they hire an SDR manager. What's the title of that role, typically? Is that a sales, VP or?
So I mean, there's many orgs that just have literally SDR managers as the title itself, and
Okay.
then they report to a VP of sales. And so
Okay.
again, a lot of companies are, unfortunately, they blend account management and account executive training into the SDR
Yeah.
function because they've never done it before. I mean,
Okay.
here's a pitfall I see all the time. A VP of sales who has some new SDRs are training them BANT qualification, right? So
Hmm.
budget, authority, need, and timing, and they're
Hmm.
literally telling their SDRs to ask for budgetary qualification questions in an
Yeah.
initial cold call. That's horrific. Don't ever do that, right?
Yeah. That
That's a
doesn't make any sense.
doesn't make any
No.
sense, but it's being
Yeah.
done. And so the reason why it's no fault, because they're, thinking that this is just a junior AE. It's not.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
appointment setters, they're qualifiers, and their job is to fill the calendar, not close deals. So you
Hmm.
have to treat them differently. So that's why an SDR manager is best there for training, management, and the right KPIs and metrics and expectations to be had.
Gotcha. Okay. So as you're working with these companies of any size, I have to assume that you have some type of playbooks that translate, you can kind of not to piggyback off the plug and play service that you titled, but they will plug and play with different clients. Is that true? And if so, how does that work?
Do you mean how the reps plug into the client's ecosystem?
With playbooks? I assume you have
Yeah.
playbooks.
Yeah.
You were talking about
Yeah.
enablement, so I assume you probably have some playbooks.
Yeah, it's part of every one of our campaigns. So we actually do a 3-week onboarding, and that entire
Okay.
3 weeks is to design the playbook.
Gotcha.
So we do a very robust intake form. We're asking it almost every question you can think of. We take and ingest that information, and we turn around a playbook in 3 weeks. And that it goes from down, and it's fully on brand and highly customizable to that specific brand and company and offering. And so the playbook itself, yes, is something that we provide. And if it's a client that started with us from its inception and then we grew it and then they took it over, then we would be using that playbook that we designed in that role. Or if it's not and they don't have a playbook and they want us to plug in, we require a playbook in order for that to be successful, because it won't be. And so that is absolutely the way we do it.
Yeah, and so maybe this is what you're saying, but to me, not necessarily an SOP, but like if you're plugging into an organization and they're managing the people that you're recruiting, I would think that there's some gray area there. There was hard to have that overlap go swimmingly every single time. How does that relationship work where you have the internal people managing kind of an external workforce?
Yep. So we treat it like, a software developer contract or any type of contractor,
Okay.
essentially is like an SDR contractor plugging in, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
still are very co-management world. So we
Okay.
do a weekly sync with their SDR manager to review their KPIs, metrics, pitfalls, things that are working. We check
Yeah.
in to see if the SDRs are, adapting to the coaching and performing on the expectations. And then we make decisions from there. So we're meeting with them weekly, as opposed to almost daily in our other campaigns.
Yeah.
And it is co-managed, and it's as clear as it can be, because you're right, it is a little bit of two chiefs in the kitchen, if you will,
Yeah.
right? Or
Right.
two cooks in the kitchen,
That's
I
what I'm
should say.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not as of a free for all with regards to the playbook, to your point.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, it's that's the part that I was kind of worried, or not worried about, but wondering about, because like you said, two chiefs in the kitchen is not going to go well at some point. So is the playbook kind of that middle ground where everybody looks at the playbook and that's where your agreement happens?
Exactly. You own these things. We own these things. It's agreed upon in advance. We do qualify and figure out what they're missing, and we have to tell them, hey, this is not something we're going to do, because you need this and this from your side. And we get to a point where we both agree, and then we go into it. I'll give you an example. We're fine with sharing clients. Peloton's a great example. Like, our reps sit in Peloton's entire ecosystem. It's been a phenomenal relationship. Another one is Strixon and Cleveland Golf. If you're a golf fan out there, we were their inside sales team for 8 years, and just recently they brought it all in house and hired our entire team. So it has definitely been something we've done for many, many, many years with many clients, and it's always been a successful one once those playbooks are fully built out, and we all know what our job is and what their job is, just like any agreement, right?
Well, I'm curious about the Strixon account, and feel free to not say what you can't say, but to me that seems like it's a consumer brand, and so they want to sell to the public. How would an SDR team be deployed there, strategically? Like, who are they calling and emailing to get in front of?
Yeah, so great point, and I have no problem sharing. Case studies are on our website. It's not what you would think it was, like you mentioned. So they have something called a green grass program, which essentially is they're selling their products and services to golf courses across the country. So we're not calling dicks. We're not calling consumers, right? We're not calling, Play It Again Sports or whatever, if that's still in business, right? What we're calling is we're calling all of the golf courses and the pro shops in the country. and we are executing those campaigns on that company's behalf. And so our
Gotcha.
reps are reaching out and say, hey, this is Gabe Strixon. We see that we're in your pro shop. And then they also have an outside sales team. So we're essentially supporting their outside sales team, and we're
Yeah.
running the inside piece. And that's what we did for 8 years with that company until they took it over.
So if you take a company like that and an application like that, more so,
Yeah.
I would, my guess is that those calls would go pretty smooth because those pro shop, the golf pros are probably not getting a ton of sales calls. This is my guess, right? Maybe they are, but they're probably going to pick the phone up and listen to a pitch probably, 80% of the time, 70%. So I would think those calls would go well, right? Like getting to the pitch. Curious how that went, but also, how does that compare to other industries that are not so easy, assuming no one is?
I don't know. I mean, your definition of easy may be different than
Yeah,
others.
that's
So,
true.
yeah. Was it successful? Yeah.
Yeah.
Were we the first golf company on their behalf to do it 8 years ago? Also, yeah. Right. It was
Yeah.
very, very old school people
Yeah.
face to face coming in doing. So
Uh-huh.
our build of doing it from an inside sales piece, we're essentially pioneered it.
Yeah.
And we were responsible for selling approximately $10 million worth of golf products a year just on our sales in regards to the initial conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's amazing.
but there are some scenarios in that space specifically, like Titleist has like a lot of exclusivity with a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
pro shops. So when you're going against companies that have exclusive situations. It's a timing scenario, and there's
Yeah.
constant follow up, and you
Contracts.
have to,
Yeah.
yeah, and you have to get them at right times, and then ask them not to do that. So there's a lot of nuance there, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot more about timing. But guys who own pro shops, they love to talk. So
Yep.
and when they pick up the phone, so it
Yeah.
was definitely a fun one for sure. And it's a lot different than cold calling cybersecurity people, So every campaign is a totally different beast, and
Yeah.
they all have positives and they all have negatives. But yeah, that
Sure.
one was a good one for sure.
So then, how do certain SDRs or teams that you build map from one client to the next? Right? Like
Yeah.
if you know about golf, you may be a golfer and you happen to be on the SDR team calling. Well, that's probably going to go a little better because you can talk, the talk. But if you get on the cybersecurity team, now it's like, well, I don't care about this. Like, how's that work?
Yeah, we source candidates in new hires, SDRs, a lot to do with their background and experience based on what
Okay.
the client is doing. We are not a fractional SDR space where our reps are calling on 5 or 6 different campaigns a year.
Okay.
Our
Okay.
reps are dedicated to that platform or that
Yeah.
product or offering for a period of time that is like at least 6 months
Yeah.
minimally. And so when we're hiring, we're looking for people who can speak or have experience in talking to that persona.
Mm-hmm.
Now, case in point, the SDR's job is to not have 30-minute conversations on the phone. Their job is to have 3 to 5 minute conversations to get them excited enough to talk to somebody to have a 30-minute conversation. So
Yes.
you don't want to be that knowledgeable, whether you are or not, on the phone about the
Yeah.
product, because now decisions are being made on that call when they should be actually made on the demo, right?
Yeah.
And so we still want to be hesitant about how much information we're supposed to be, sharing on those calls.
Yeah.
My analogy is really simple. We're the trailer to the movie. You don't
Okay.
talk about the middle and the end of the movie in the
Yeah. That's great.
trailer that is, ruining the movie. So
Yeah.
we're the trailer to the
Teaser.
movie. Yeah, we're the teaser, the preview, exactly. And
I like that.
that's what we want to be. And so we know our role, we know our space, we know what we're not, and we're not trying to pretend to be experts,
Mm-hmm.
even though, we do want to know a lot about the product.
Yeah. Hey, this has been a great conversation.
Thanks, man.
But as we wrap up here, what kind of first steps or kind of like takeaways or pieces of advice you would give to both of these different first stage and second stage? Like looking at the first stage, what would you tell someone who's going to basically hire their first SDR and they're kind of ready to do that? They know it's time. What would you tell them?
Well, if you're going to be hiring your first SDR, my recommendation is take a pause and vet out some agencies like ours
Yeah.
and see what they could provide you. There are opportunities where you can do this at even smaller price points than what you would pay, an
For
SDR
an actual,
yourself. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, and also have all that support. So that would be
Yeah.
my immediate thing. But if you're going to do it anyway, make sure that you are trying your best to get as much tech or data enablement in place for those reps to become
Yeah.
successful, or you're just going to be burning and churning through reps, and it's going to be a recruitment nightmare. And so that is my first, I guess, advice for someone who is starting off in this space. For
Yeah.
the big companies out there, another thing to think about is A/B testing, right? And launching new territories and launching new markets and launching new regions. You don't want to distract if you have an SDR team already with what they're currently doing when you're trying something new. And so to outsource that piece to it alone is a great
Mhm.
idea. And then you could provide, A/B testing. You could have friendly, healthy competition with your internal team,
Yeah.
and you could launch new markets. So it allows you to do things on a flexible level, and so you're not, like, again, distracting your current team and pivoting them all the time, because then you're never having anything successful. There's no consistency there.
Yeah. Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for being on the show. This is
Thanks, Lee.
good.
Yeah, man.
I feel like there's a opportunity here to get a lot of the sales experts I've had on the podcast together and maybe do a panel. I think that would be kind of interesting, talking about enablement and buyer's journey and those kind of things. So
Yeah.
we'll have
Put
to
us
have
put
you
us all in
back.
a room. We'll have some fun.
I know. It'd be interesting for sure.
Sounds good. I'm down.
If we want to send people your way, where do we send them?
LinkedIn. My
Yeah.
LinkedIn, I post every day. We give a lot of free content. Again, if you're doing this yourself, you can go there and get a lot of
Yeah.
resources and figure
Yeah.
out how to do it yourself, I'm sure. So we will definitely connect and respond and communicate if you have any questions. We're there.
Okay, yeah, we'll put that link in the description, and I can
Cool.
also underscore that too because I've seen after we met, following you guys on LinkedIn, your whole company's on there creating content, sharing valuable information, all really good stuff for whatever stage you're at. So definitely check them out there.
Thanks, Lee.
Okay, thanks a lot.